creatives are often praised for their brilliance, but does that translate to where the money resides? And how can Black creatives protect their intellectual property against the backdrop of a system that conspires to consume us and exploit us? And when the system does do that, what are the ways that Black creatives can stand up and protect themselves? Well, I'm glad you asked because we're talking about it after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Brokers, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country has done to keep us broke. Now here are your hosts, Amber and Erica.
Hey everyone, I'm Amber.
And I'm Erica.
And y'all, let me just tell you, brokish, we done leveled up, okay? Just call us Sierra, really. That's what you need to call us.
Wow.
We have leveled up today, okay?
I've never even heard the song. Am I old? Because I don't even know the song.
Yes, you are old. And I mean, just ruin the level up. But anyway, we have leveled up today, y'all. We have a very, very special guest with us today. We are talking about Black creatives and intellectual property. And we are doing it with a whole literal platinum R&B superstar. So we're so excited.
I am very excited about this conversation. And yes, we have certainly leveled up. But Amber, before we get to our special guest, what have you been up to?
I mean, y'all, honestly, I really haven't been up to anything. I've been trying to get my Christmas life in order. I got a little estimate for lights on my house. Child, that man said he wanted my kidney and my liver. I said, oh, Jose is the one who's leveled up, okay? Because, woo, that's a lot.
Are you getting the lights or not?
I'm going to get a few more estimates before I, give Jose my vital organs because I'm just not able to do that. I'm just trying to, get this last quarter. I got a whole bunch of kids. I'm starting to out of circulars, snatching up things here and there. So that's really what I've been trying to do is, get my holiday life in order, pick my Christmas card, which I know you already done that, haven't you? You already got your Christmas card picked.
I'm working on it, whatever.
Such an overachiever. But how you doing nevertheless?
I am fine, Amber. So let me tell you, because I know you're interested. So first of all, I'm very excited. We just had my mother's 75th birthday party. So
Yes.
She turned 75. Yes, we were so excited. And I don't know if you know this about me, Amber, but I am like a Christian astrologist, right? So my mother, okay, I'm not going to get a woman's whole birthday, but anyway, she's on a cusp. And I'm like,
a cusp?
A cusp, like for astrology, like
for signs. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I don't care what these people say this woman is. This woman is indecisive, and I am certain that this lady is a Libra, right? So anyway, she cannot make up her mind about anything, and I'm like, hey, do you want to have a party? And at first she was like, no, I don't want to have a party. And then she's like, yes, I want to have a party. And then she's like, well, I want 100 people. And then she's like, oh, I just want the family. And I'm like, girl, so my sister and I were like, look, you having a party, it's going to be on this date. And don't ask, I told her, I say, lady, don't ask me nothing else about this party. I'm done with you. So, I'm getting it together. I'm getting her little friends coming from out of town for surprises, right? And we're like, we're going to get her makeup done because, she never does that. Amber gives me a makeup lady. So that's great. We like order the party bus because, they all 70, 80, right? Like, so we don't need them driving around Dallas trying, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, that lady came and she had on her tuxedo suit, child, with the bling, and she had her
Mama
blinged out
looked
cane.
good, y'all. Yes.
And she thought she was just, oh my gosh, Amber, she
Mama
was so
looked good.
excited.
I saw the picture, baby. Mama looked good.
And I have not seen her so happy in such a long time. So I'm not going to be able to get lights on my house for Christmas because we was paying for this party. But that's okay because my mama was very, very pleased. The other thing, real quick, spent. It was very well spent. Very well spent. Other quick thing for the brokers, because y'all know Brokish started out talking about money. And now we talk about a bunch of broken systems, not just the broken financial ones. But my man, Jay-Z, y'all know I can't stand his ass. But anyway, he did settle the dispute today. So Jay-Z came out and told y'all today, if you have a choice between $500,000 and a meeting with Jay-Z, take the money. Jay-Z told y'all, stop expecting to meet with him. This man said his music Everything he want to say, he put in his music. He said, y'all spend the $11 to go out there and listen to his music and leave him alone. Stop trying to have a meeting with that man.
Yeah.
So
Now I think I agree, except if it was $500,000 or Beyonce, I might go eat with Beyonce, but
no, you
I would never gonna pick Jay-Z.
Amber.
I said my child.
Anyway, so I really do hope that this will settle some disputes within our community where people think that you can just talk to somebody and the osmosis of the wisdom, it just comes into your veins. Leave that man alone. He don't want to talk to y'all. He said, take the money if they're going to give y'all the money.
Well, these are the same people that think you can, get to financial freedom and work your way out of white supremacy by getting an LLC and a tax ID number. So,
This is not you're not talking about DJ Envy, allegedly, or you're not. That's
no,
not.
I'm saying, but the same people who be like, oh, you need to get the knowledge from Jay-Z. Them the same people who think, oh, if you get an LLC and an EIN, you got generational wealth. And it's like, not quite.
I'm about to mute the term generational wealth on Twitter because I have been following this whole DJ Envy thing very closely because I'm actually doing research for school in a similar vein, right? So this is very interesting for me. But in every single one of his videos, when he talks about what he's doing and why he's doing it, he's saying, oh, this is for generational wealth. And I'm like, oh, y'all need to stop DJ Envy. And
most Ponzi schemes are. Most Ponzi schemes
about your generational wealth, your specific generational wealth. But it was so sad because I saw in one, and this is all allegedly, right? DJ Envy has not been charged with any crimes as far as I know. But anyway, his business partner who has been charged with some crimes, allegedly, there was this guy who gave him $300,000 and the man actually passed away and he has 2 small children and the $300,000 apparently has vaporized. And the grandfather is trying to get the money for the children. And it's so sad because the man isn't here to represent his own interests. And then they're trying to figure out how to, and that was the literal generation that was supposed to be benefiting from the wealth of that particular situation. So anyway, we have to come back and talk about this convergence of celebrity and legitimation that happens when we're just all thinking, oh, well, I heard about it on the Breakfast Club, so it must be true. And I think we know that is not the case.
And just because you're famous, that don't mean you good with money. That's why DJ Envy wife is deleting all her IG posts with her designer bags in them. Okay? All right. Yeah.
And that ain't alleged because that's what the people... I think we saw that happen in real time. But anyway, I'm not the feds. I don't know. I hope everybody, whatever. We'll see what happens. But anyway, Amber, please introduce our guest.
Y'all, we are so excited. So with us today, I mean, not that I have to introduce her, but we have platinum R&B star from the 90s legendary group Brownstone. We have Miss Nikki Gilbert Daniels with us. And it's crazy because she's not just the R&B star. Like, she is a whole producer, a whole creative, an actress. And so, even though I just got through listening to Grapevine, what we're actually here to talk about today is her work on the other side of the camera, as a producer, as a writer, as a director. And so we are so honored to have her here with us today, y'all. So thank you so much. Yes. We fired Erica. That was not her. That was not her ministry. So
come on, Dougie Fresh better watch out. Dougie Fresh better watch out.
No, he's got all the job security. That is not the will of God concerning Erica. Okay. But tell the brokers, because I think a lot of times when you meet people one way, especially when they become legendary in that one box, you kind of forget that they do other things. And so most of us were introduced to you through the trio Brownstone, all the music y'all gave us, all the hits. But there's so much more to your story than that. And that's actually the part of the story that we're here to talk to us about today. So talk to us a little bit about your work on the other side of the camera as a producer and a director and a creative.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you ladies for having me. It's always wonderful to talk to smart, educated women of color. Thank you for inviting me to participate. And thank you for asking about, life outside of Brownstone. I'm really grateful for what I've been able to do as a result of being signed to Michael Jackson's record label. Like, who does that? But I'm a person who's always like, most people assume that it's, the creative sort of writer director part of it came after the success of music. But I was always like, I was in a theater group in high school. So I was always building sets and writing stories and I think I wrote my first poem that I said in school in like 7th grade. So it's called Strolling in the Wrong Direction. It was about a city that was very segregated and racist in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
I won't name it, but it was deep. I mean, well, it was my reimagining of what a situation that everybody in our community often talked about, personal encounters in a particular city. But I've always been interested in building and creating, dope ideas and stories. And one of the first things that I wrote and like fully completed was, the play Soul Kittens Cabaret. And I was really inspired to do that after I was on tour with Tyler Perry playing Vera Brown in Meet the Browns. You shot. So I think more people know me probably from Meet the Browns than Brownstone. It's crazy. But I loved it. And I remember Dave and I kind of coming up with what the vibe of Vera was and adding our little nuances here and there. I'll never forget Tyler was like, oh, so you just made this character alcoholic? I was like, well, a little swing. Cause everybody know that, she was like kind of a more conservative sort of church aunt. And right. I just kind of put a little swag on her. Gold tooth, heart on the face, crazy hair. And it just opened up a real desire to continue to write. So I actually started writing Soul Kittens Cabaret around that time and finished because I had started it and I was like, no, I'm going to finish it. So I started Soul Kittens Cabaret. A lot of people don't know that is what actually inspired R&B Divas, which Selena Johnson, Faith Evans, Monifa, Trinice, a bunch of amazing women, yes. Angie Stone, who are all a part of R&B Divas, were actually in Soul Kittens Cabaret first. And we documented that journey. And I was like, this could really work. So that's where it started. Inspired by Tyler and just, always being a writer, always being somebody who loves telling stories.
So just to give you guys some background, what we're here to talk about today is Nikki is currently engaged in litigation, protecting the intellectual property that belongs to her regarding Soul Kittens Cabaret. So I know a lot of y'all have heard of and, have seen the star show P-Valley. And we're going to post the receipts with this episode like we do with the other ones. But there is overwhelming evidence that P-Valley is based, not even loosely, but based substantially on the work that Nikki wrote back in the early 2000s, Soul Kittens Cabaret. And it's interesting because the people at Stars do not even deny that Soul Kittens Cabaret was actually pitched to them in 2014, long before it ever made it to the big screen. And so one of the things that we want to talk about today, we've talked about on Brokish, eminent domain, land theft. We've talked about a lot of the ways that the system conspires to exploit and take from Black people. And so we're bringing you that story through the lens of Black creatives, because one of the things we don't talk about a lot is intellectual property, what it is, how you're vulnerable. And most importantly, what we hope you guys know today is what we talk about all the time is that it does not matter. Even if you have sold 1 million records, even if you have done and gone to the highest heights, you cannot work your way around the ways that this system conspires to break and exploit Black people. And so that's really the story we're here to talk about today, behind Soul Kittens Cabaret and what motivated Nikki to move forward in courage in her fight to protect her intellectual property. And hopefully we can inspire some other Black creatives who listen as well. So, let's get to it.
So Amber, can we start off, Nikki, if you don't mind, by telling us more about your vision and what Soul Kittens Cabaret is?
Oh, wow. First and foremost, Soul Kittens Cabaret is a love letter to my hometown of Detroit. I get a little emotional sometimes because I think about my mom, who's a jazz singer, who really was the root of the inspiration. She sang in all these little juke joints and supper clubs in the city. She wasn't a stripper, but there were, showgirls. And, if you know anything about Detroit, Detroit is one of the most culturally diverse. It's just an amazing community and an amazing city. And before the casinos were built, a lot of the older establishments, historical. I think Baker's Keyboard Lounge is like one of the oldest jazz clubs, if not the oldest jazz club in the country, right? So, I mean, as in the world, I think. I'm sorry. And it's just a really beautiful city full of art and creativity. And, you know, the issue of casinos came up. It was a real issue. The issue of potential gentrification in our community was a real issue. I remember my mom, you know, talking to me about it. And my mother actually had some buildings downtown, believe it or not. It's crazy, that she got at auction. And I didn't know, because I was just getting my career kicked off. And, you know, I was concerned about all this. I did not understand the value of what my mother was trying, you know, to do. And I remember she would be like, hey, I need to cover these taxes on this building. And I would be like, oh, what are you kidding? Like, I just didn't understand it. And as these casinos started to build, there were some, you know, smaller venues like the Soul Kittens Cabaret, which is a fictitious, you know, venue establishment. But there were venues that unfortunately had to face, you know, closing due to, you know, I don't want to necessarily say land grabs, but y'all know how it goes, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't understand the value of it. So I remember just wanting to, in addition to that, there was a woman, my first ever experience with a transgender LGBTQIA community member, was a woman who, and I'm not going to call her name out because I don't want to draw her into this, but she was very, very popular as a hairstylist, as an MC and a host. And I just remember being a little girl, a little confused, because I'm just like, you're a little confused because things weren't as sophisticated as they are now and advanced, right? In terms of how to describe. And you still have to be careful because it's the landmine, right? But I just remember being so enamored with that. And as my career progressed, all of these various amazing energies that were from that community and how much they cared and what their struggles were, and the struggles of like the women who, like my mother, the women like myself, the women I encountered throughout my career, those individual struggles and that judgment. And I just came up with this incredible, I will never forget, writing Soul Kittens Cabaret was like water for me. It's just, and I was living each of these parts, and I was bringing Carmen with the struggles with her weight, and the Queen Bees, and they're just bringing all these amazing parts, and the homophobic, disrespectful, which, by the way, Isaiah Washington is my boy. No shade to Isaiah at all. I love him. He played me hell. He would have definitely been playing that character in Soul Kittens Cabaret. But I just wrote, and it just came to me, and it was literally one of the easiest, funnest experiences of my life. And I just immediately started hitting the pavement because I knew what this show had the potential to do, not just for the entertainment industry, but just for underserved communities, just dealing with the issue of gentrification in our communities and what that meant. And I understood that there were layers upon layers of story in this, and introducing, at the time that I wrote the character Tata Burlesque, which Tata is auntie in certain communities, French,
Right.
At the time that I wrote it, I knew I had to be careful about how it was referenced, because at first I described him in my very first draft that I sent out to all my friends to kind of read and give me their vibe on it. I wrote transgender drag queen over the top. Like, there were a lot of things that one of my friends was like, soften up that language a little bit because everybody's not fully into that space yet. But I knew what this character needed to be, so it just made sense. It was a beautiful love letter to my city. And it touched on a lot of issues that impact our community. And I shopped it to everybody.
And also, before you shopped it, it was a stage play. And I think, what was there, like 2 or 3 revivals? It was like wildly popular. And you ended up putting it in a DVD release as well that is still out there. And so, it's interesting because you think about what 2006 is, almost like 20 years ago. That was a gamble, right? Like that could have went, that could have went either way. And so, the fact that obviously it was popular enough for you to do it several times, like these images, people needed to see it. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And so you said you shopped it all around, and again, talk about what you want to talk about, and Amber can maybe fill in some of the gaps too. But it's my understanding that you pitched it to some people that we might know. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely weren't the first, or honestly the last people that I pitched it to. And I started shopping it almost immediately. Like when I did the showcase in Detroit, I shopped it to an attorney friend of mine. He made a small investment in it. We sold out. It was amazing. I mean, we didn't sell out enough to recoup the investment, but we knew that it was hugely successful there. And that was sort of where the making of happened or whatever. And then that opened up the door for me to be able to do the DVD. I shopped it to Swirl, and we put together this DVD that had, you know, I just called on my friends because I didn't know what the hell I was doing in terms of, you know, being a directress or whatever you want to call it. I just knew these stories told the right way would resonate. So Fantasia, Kenya Moore, actually, ironically, Faith Evans, you know, just an amazing, I don't want to get to naming people because I'll leave people out. But we did the DVD, and shortly after doing the DVD, which at the beginning, so to be clear, from the very beginning of this, it was never just a play. Like I have literally PowerPoint presentations dating back to 2005 and 2006. This was always Soul Kittens Cabaret venues, Soul Kittens Cabaret musical. No, the ideation for this TV show, making of, all of that, which is why we, you know, started filming before even the DVD. We started filming the behind the scenes of the making of with Tatiana Ali, Trinice from American Idol. So this was always a multi-layered approach to a brand, right? I knew that we could have venues, we could have live shows, we could have concerts. You know, this could be the show that was, you know, our sort of urban version of Chicago. We'd even talk about New York and Broadway. So it was always a big picture. I have the inability to think small, probably all over the place a little too much and think a little too broad. But before going in to pitch it to Lionsgate, the CEO of Lionsgate, I was pitching it everywhere as a complete brand. In fact, that's what I pitched to them as well.
And also, just to be clear, you did everything right along the way because you had your work copyrighted prior to the pitch, correct? And it was copyrighted and it was registered with the Writers Guild Association. And so that's another thing.
Federal copyright in 2006 and Writers Guild was 2004.
Right.
Federal copyright is the most important.
Exactly. And again, these things are not disputed.
Can y'all tell us how that works though, real fast? Because I just want to know, like, what elements can you copyright, can you not? Just because I'm not familiar with that space.
So
yeah, I mean, okay, you go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, so really you just submit your work to the copyright office, and you're attesting that it's an original work, and you go through the process, and they, you know, offer people an opportunity to like contest, like there's like a waiting period and all the things. And then once that's satisfied, they issue you a copyright. It's like a serial number, like kind of what's the same thing that's on your TV. And that trails your work everywhere you go.
Yeah, and it's important to know for young creatives, because at the time I was just registering things through WGA, which that is great because of course WGA is an awesome organization, and you know it always helps to have a multi-layered approach to protection. But what protects you in the event of a federal copyright case is a federal copyright, and it's not super expensive. And I would encourage everyone to do that first and foremost, because that is the one that holds up in federal court.
Nikki, what's super expensive though? Because I'm just thinking about
under $100. I'm just gonna say I don't want to quote their rates, but depending on what it is, like even less than that. It's not crazy. It's not like a trademark. Trademarks gonna cost you, but a copyright of an intellectual property is not very expensive. It's definitely worth whatever you spend to protect yourself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So when did you know, because I want to kind of, maybe we go to how we got to where we are and then look back a little bit to kind of give people a lesson that, you know, that we're trying to, but when did you first realize like, that looks familiar? Like, I've seen that before. You know, did your phone start blowing up, or, you know, like how did you first realize that, you know, this is a problem?
You know, to be completely honest with you, I wanted to just not really acknowledge it as an issue because, you know, just full transparency. I had a previous litigation for R&B divas, unfortunately. And it's actually, let me say this the right way. I actually filed a complaint, but there was a mandatory arbitration clause. So it was an arbitration, not a litigation. And unfortunately, I lost my sister Maxie literally a week before we were supposed to see the arbitrator. So I don't even remember what happened there. Thank God things are much better there. I have a great relationship with TV1. We have some exciting things happening. But I didn't want to do it because there was the sort of trauma of the reminder of what this, it was long and it was painful and we lost pretty much everything and had to start over, right? So my husband saw it at first and I've been hearing about it, and I don't miss anything. Even if I don't acknowledge it, it's just this brain is always going. And I've been hearing about it, and I started reading. And as I was reading some stuff, I was like, okay, this sounds familiar. However, Nikki, don't stop tripping. Like everything isn't, bad. And I knew that, the world would, they're not very kind to women of color standing up for ourselves. It just is what it is. Like we are angry. We are chasing clout. We are all the horrible things. And we don't get given the benefit of the doubt that a lot of other people do in situations like this. So just prior to that, I had this big, ridiculous Kelly Price moment, which was horrible. And I really did not want to pursue this. And my husband said, babe, you got to come down and you got to see this. And then my phone starts to ring and I'm like, oh, here we go. And I went down and I saw the red suitcase and I was like, it's just a red suitcase. And I was like, and I literally waited, and it was very painful to watch it because I, as the person who created it, even though they were sprinkled throughout, in my opinion, in a very sort of creative way for someone who doesn't know, who didn't give birth to it, but your child, right? And I'm just sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm like, here we go. And, I had to make a decision to either leave it alone and, save myself the public ridicule and potentially not working and the blackball and the lose the money and all of that, and just live with it. And hopefully it didn't take off as big, and maybe it's not. And and we ended up here. I just, it was just in my face all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was just a constant reminder. It became, like the number one show or close to it. Like it just was a daily. And then people, oh, you did this and you didn't tell us. And people were pissed. Like, oh, so you flipped it a little bit. Okay. And I'm like, holy mo. So we tried to just send some letters and just be like, look, let's do this all under the radar. We worked on that, for almost a year. And it didn't work. Mm-hmm. We had no.
And so at a certain point, it just fell apart, and then you had to move forward in a different way.
Yes. Unfortunately, the private sort of let's work this out, because, as a Black woman, I don't want to be in a situation with any other Black woman. Contrary to popular belief, as much as I don't avoid confrontation, if I have to do it, I don't walk into it. I don't welcome it. I don't seek it out. I'm always one who's trying to figure out a way to do what Michelle Obama, our forever first lady, has told us to do. But sometimes you got to, instead of high, you got to get kind of medium.
Go all the way low. See, on this show, we go all the way low. Michelle was wrong.
Medium. Okay, we'll call this medium. Yeah.
I also wonder how, we've all heard the stories. We've all seen the videos of, people we can't even count, Black creatives who have told their stories of being taken advantage of, being, exploited, having their work taken from them. And I even remember while we were preparing for this, I watched the interview you did where you were saying the first contract you signed with Brownstone, like your dad had told you some things to look for, some buzzwords. And even though you saw a few of them, you signed it anyway. And I think sometimes we sort of get normalized to this. It's almost like a hazing or a rite of passage that, people are entitled to steal your work, or they're entitled to take advantage of you if you want to work in a creative space. So did you sort of battle against that feeling, or feelings like, I got to charge it to the game because this is just kind of what happens in this industry, when you were deciding whether you wanted to move forward? Because it's almost like we see it so much that it feels normal to us, like that, just like a cost of business almost, if you want to exist in this space.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the truth. I think one of the biggest issues in kids, which is pretty much what we still are at 22 and 23 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? Most people are in college. You know what I mean? One of the big disadvantages there is that we don't understand. We haven't had the experiences. And when my dad said that, my dad is I'm sorry, he's in heaven now, but an amazing songwriter. He wrote If I Were Your Woman for Gladys Knight. He was quality control for Motown. My dad wrote the Temptations Christmas album, y'all, so stop playing. And we got a surprise coming for that. So my dad was a very smart man. And it's funny because I was looking on YouTube and we were kind of going over some of the music and I would see his name. And I'm like, I wonder how much my dad is getting for that, like, In My Mind. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
My dad produced that record. You know, like, what is he getting for that? And he tried to tell me. And I said, yeah, okay, I hear you, but this is Michael Jackson, daddy. And we're going to sign this contract because unfortunately, if we didn't, somebody else would have. You know what I mean? Because that is just sort of the industry standard. And while I very early in my career established a reputation for being difficult, yes, I was labeled a very difficult woman, young girl with a chip on my shoulder, and sometimes had to be corrected because I asked too many questions. And I asked questions because, you know, I was like, well, this doesn't feel like this should be like that. And this doesn't. And the truth is, during that time, that was just the standard. It was just kind of like, you knew if you worked at Taco Bell, you was going to get $3.50, $3.75. You was lucky if you get $4. You understand what I'm saying? So the rules of the game were already pretty much in play.
Right.
And this little big mouth girl with a chip on her shoulders from Detroit wasn't going to change nothing. So I just figured, and I remember very specifically thinking, because, you know, I put Brownstone together, I had the auditions, like I didn't understand that I owned this brand. Like I created this brand from scratch. Like I paid for the rehearsals, I paid for the studio, I paid, you know what I mean? Like I named the group, you know, because we weren't educated about the importance of ownership in the 90s, right? We were just told to shut up and sing. And there is a beautiful thing about what we were able to accomplish by just being able to be creatives and be artists. What would have been more beautiful is if there were more people who understood that longevity and long-term relationships with talent leads to more wealth overall for everybody. Because when we look at how it plays out every single time, the story doesn't change. Whether it's Prince with Slave on his face or Michael Jackson shocking not everybody at it, you know, artists are always feeling like we've been betrayed and we've been bamboozled and we've been hoodwinked. And I just have never understood why, you know, it's like NBA and NFL, you know, they take care of their players. Yeah, there are side effects here and there. You talk about some of the physical stuff that happens, but they're unions and they're protected. When you look at SAG-AFTRA, like they're standing together, they're protected. Unfortunately, there is just no protection for creatives. And it's just sad because everyone, well, they don't lose because they can just recycle and play in perpetuity, which is the word my dad told me to look out for.
Your daddy
so,
knew
you know,
some
yeah.
things. Your daddy knew some things. He was putting you on game for real.
That, like, I'll be trying to tell folks, like, you know, like, listen, please, because I didn't listen to my dad. And, you know, I don't regret anything because hindsight 2020, I could have not signed the deal and just been doing hair in the salon, which would have been fine. But, yeah, he tried to tell me. He did. Yeah. And I was hard-headed. Hard-head makes a lawsuit 50 years later.
But at least you learn. So, you know, by the time we get to Soul Kitten Cabaret, we got our copyrights in place. Yes. We got everything in order. But now we still have to make the decision to, you know, go into David versus Goliath mode because that's what it is. And so, you know, now that you are actually involved in the litigation, you know, I think it's so important for you to tell people sort of what you've learned, because I think a lot of people think, oh, you file a lawsuit. I talk to juries about this all the time. People think, oh, you file your lawsuit and then you go down to the court and you get a piece of paper that says come back on this day and you get your trial and then you get to present your case to the jury. But tell the world, you know, what really happens when you go to war against a corporate behemoth.
So, you know, I knew that it would not be, as simple as like, okay, I'll get a court date. Cause, you know, thankfully great attorneys, they've made it clear that they kind of made it clear to me that, you know, this is a possibility of that, but you hear it, right? You hear it and you're like, I'm cool, whatever, boom, let's go, no matter what it takes. And then a year goes by and you're like, yo, well, can we get to answering this question? And it's really unusual. And my case is unusual because, of course, this whole thing started literally. I literally went from losing both my parents, pandemic, to lawsuit.
Oh,
so my family hasn't had, and in between, we've lost several family members, right? So you kind of have this very, and I still got it because maybe I'm just a little crazy, and my husband might be a little crazy because he's in it with me. But, I had this sort of unstoppable, we got this no matter what it is. But as a human being, and especially the most difficult part is you wait a year to find out if it's going to be like a basic dismissal, which is just a dismissal based on no merits, right? Yep. And then it gets shifted. And then, the shifting and the amount of time it's taken to just find out if I can go to trial. My grandson was 4. I'm sorry, y'all. That's my dog responding to my alarm. He's gonna bark all through this. Okay. It started when my grandson was 4, and my grandson is about to be 9 in 4 months.
Wow.
So no, I'm sorry. It started when he was 5. That's inaccurate. It started when he was 5, and he's about to be 9. I'm sorry, you guys. I didn't bank.
Oh no, that's okay.
We can't
that's
hear
okay.
We can't.
Joe in the back. It's okay, Kato. It's okay. It's okay.
But no, that's a very real thing. And I will tell you, as somebody who does this work, there is a name for it. It's called litigation fatigue. And it is a very real strategy that corporations and large litigants employ, where you are very strategic about how you move through the litigation in a way where you really hope to tire the other person out, like literally exhaust them, where they're either willing to take a settlement that is substantially less than what the value of the claim is, or they're willing to outright abandon it altogether. And so it's interesting sort of, hearing your story from the other side, because, I think people talk about justice and the justice system and going to the courts, but, in this world that we live in, where money and greed and white supremacy trumps everything, nobody is playing by the rules except for you. Ain't nobody playing by the rules except for you. And that's really sad.
For real.
Where do you get the strength to keep going on? And so my role on the show is I'm Debbie Downer. I'm always like, here's the rain cloud. But I'm just thinking you're doing all the right things, right? So you're like, I have this idea. I've had this idea for 20 years. I write it down. I copyright it. I'm going through all of the channels. I'm talking to people about my ideas. I'm putting it on stages. I'm putting it on DVDs. And then at the beginning, it sounds like, of a pandemic, not only are you hit with the pandemic and family losses and all of these things, then you're seeing what looks a lot like your work in front of you. And then now we have so many years later where you're still having to fight through this. So what's the thing that keeps you going on? Because if there are other creatives who are watching this, they could be like, well, what's the point? Like, right? Like, Nikki did all the right things and Nikki's still in the battle. So like, where do you get the fortitude?
My faith, for real, like, my ancestors and my faith, and just kind of, knowing that, this is something that is happening to someone who has established a fan base of sorts. This is, I have people in my, that I can reach out to and be like, God, you know what I'm saying? Like, and lose it. Like, I got a great tribe and I think about what happened with Eric Monti, right? The creator of Good Times, who, give me a break. Good Times, y'all don't know about Eric Monti?
No.
Oh my God, that's a whole show. So Eric Monti, who created Good Times, he created What's Happening, he created Cooley High, which was what What's Happening was based on, What's Happening Now, did some stuff for All in the Family. Just an amazing, incredible writer, right? I'm gonna bring folks' name up, and it's like fighting the world, but the executive producer, basically took the credit, allegedly, right? And allegedly they settled for, what I don't believe was a reasonable amount of money. Allegedly, it was, smaller amount of money. And I think he was never able to work. He reinvested that money in something else. And he's alive now, but, he lives in, he's in poverty. He unfortunately, allegedly there was, some drug use and, what I mean, just kind of to cope with everything that was happening. And these are the stories, right? And then, of course, Sophia Stewart in The Matrix, we all have heard that story. And so many others, so many have reached out to me since I filed this claim. Just, keep going, because I did, there are people who I will not mention, who are very creative, popular people that we're all familiar with, who are like, just go, like, really, because I settled quietly. I didn't say anything, right? Because you do start to wonder, like, would it just be easier to just be like, especially, it's unimaginable what my family is experiencing now.
Yeah.
I have people very close to me that are very ill. I have, it's just unimaginable. It's terrible. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it, but it's interesting. One of the defendants in my case reposted something because I guess Jared Butler, who did Olympus Has Fallen, it's a different situation, but he just had a lawsuit and they settled, right? And she reposted it. And under the post, people were just like, it's never going to change until someone goes all the way. And everybody was giving all the reasons why people don't go all the way.
Yeah.
And, I've asked God, like, why does this keep happening? Like, why do I have to keep going through this? I just want to be creative. It limits my creativity in every way. I watched the NAACP award them. I watched Tamron Hall have them on the show 11 times. I watch people who don't even have claims filed with facts that get major headline news just based on an accusation. Like, we don't know what's going on with Envy, but he's everywhere because of what people are saying, right? And I look at how my case has been muted and diluted and disregarded, and it's a really important case for all creatives. If this is not an example of a case that deserves to be heard because of copyright infringement, I won't know what to say to people after this. Yeah. Because it's just never, I don't think we'll ever have, maybe not ever have, but I just don't think, to answer your question short, I don't think that people will have the audacity moving forward to be as bold as they were in my case in the future. And that, whatever happens here, gives me some sort of, feeling of victory, I guess. The fact that I said it, that I spoke out about it. No matter what they think, I think the people are, unanimously like, yeah, something over there. And that will always follow them. So I have to be proud of that. And the fact that my family's proud of me. My grandson just said the other day, we're going to win, Nana. We're going to win this case. But when I see how it's affected him, it's just, you really give up a lot for what I hope ends up being a very important precedent-setting copyright litigation. Yeah. But I can only hope.
And it's interesting when I listen to you talk, I hear the parallels. We had Kavon Ward on the show a few months ago from an organization called Where Is My Land? And they literally help Black people reclaim stolen land. And some of the stories she told us about were like literally audacious, brazen theft. And I think about that and the parallels with the intellectual property you're talking about here, because you can tell in the pleadings, they know that the odds are stacked in their favor in terms of just how unlikely it is that people pursue these. Because, I was reviewing some of the pleadings. They don't deny that there was access. They do not contest the fact that you pitched this to them. And they actually don't even dispute the substantial similarity. That's what's interesting to me. Their dispute is that, well, it's similar, but it's not similar enough in the ways that rise to a protected similarity. And it's like, but that's literally the definition of what a jury should decide. Like, that's literally the definition of why there's an issue of fact. And so you can just kind of tell in how they are framing the case. Like, you look at things like they didn't hire an expert. You can kind of tell when people know that they've gotten away with something before and they feel empowered to do it again. And, listening to you talk, it just kind of reminds me of some of the things that Kaban was talking about, like how people have literally just had their land stolen, literally in broad daylight. And I feel like that is very similar to what you're describing, because you can tell by how they're pleading the case. Like they're actually not even fighting about things that you would think somebody would fight about if there was really no infringement, because they've admitted to a lot of the things that you claimed in your petition. And it's interesting to see it,
The bottom line is, I wrote a song that said actions speak louder than words. And I think sometimes money speaks louder than truth.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A lot of times.
Yes. And so, well, go ahead, Erica. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, and just in terms of parallels, of course, I'm thinking about Monique, and not the same situation, but just being bold enough to be like, these people did me wrong. And whether it's a little bit or a lot, I'm gonna stand 10 toes down and be like, they did me wrong and we need to fix this. Right. And so I just want to, spur you on, urge you on, because we know that the system is meant for you not to do this. Even though they give you a way to do it, they don't want you to protect what's yours, right? That protection is for other people. And so I do want to encourage you to be able to go after and be able to protect the thing that is yours.
Yeah. And it just, the thing is, the reason they're so confident, and they have, I mean, they've had case, one of my defendants has had a case before this particular judge, and the another one has had. So these things come up, and unfortunately, plaintiffs often lose at the summary judgment phase of a case. But the reality is, until one of us is brave enough to say, I believe that I deserve the opportunity to have a jury decide what this looks like. We can't change some of the cases that they're able to lean on in order to negatively impact really truthful, honest copyright infringement cases, until a case comes around where, and again, I say this, and it's crazy, because the hardest part for me in this process has been not being able to speak my truth for fear that they will use it against me, which they've done. I mean, like, there's so many. They just recently sent a bunch of screenshots and videos and whatever, and I don't regret my historical documentation of this case, because unfortunately the big boys ain't reporting it. Thank God for y'all and people who have given me a platform to talk about it. But until we actually get to a place where a court looks at a plaintiff's case and says, these are the reasons why this is going forward, and these are the reasons why these people will prevail, there is nothing set up. There's no law that we can reference. Maybe some buried somewhere deep, but there's no law that we can reference to help others who may encounter this.
And that's why they slap them NDAs on you when you settle quietly, because that's because there's no precedent now, and
everything's under seal, and everything is
exactly right,
redacted, and
exactly right. Yeah. So tell us what you are doing now while you fight this fight, and about some of the things you're doing to help other Black creatives and equip them to protect their property and to be wise and aware, so that they can, as much as possible, do what they can to protect their work.
Absolutely. So it's inspired. And again, this is one of those things where you have to say, okay, God, what is the reason for this? Like, maybe the reason isn't, the quote unquote, like, victory in everyone's face this way. Maybe it is just that it triggers or inspires something that ultimately helps way more people to protect themselves so they don't have to get to this. So my goal is to make sure that no other creative has to be 7 figures into a litigation, right?
What you say now,
because
Nikki?
My goal is to help to make sure that young creatives, right, which most of us are
7 figures?
Yeah, we're
wow.
about there.
And that's at summary judgment. That's not jury trial. That's summary judgment.
Trial. This is just 3 years of waiting for them to decide whether they are similar enough after all the comparisons and the charts and all of that to go to jury. And they could, the reality is dealing with and accepting, I've been waking up with anxiety every day of my life for the last 3 years, because you wonder if there's someone literally holding our whole life in their hands. So they could very easily say, nope, this isn't going to trial. And I'm $1 million in debt and picking up the pieces, which we'll do, right? But my goal is for no other creative to have to do that, because it is terrible. So we've established, our Creatives Coalition, Creatives for Equality. You see what's happening. SAG-AFTRA, thankfully, they've got and I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA, and I need my health insurance, so I'll be out there too. No Roger, no run, no rent. But a lot of independent creatives, shout out to Eric Monty. No Roger, no rerun, no rent. Okay. But a lot of creatives don't have the education and the information. I didn't have it for a long time, and I'm still learning. And the bottom line is, when you look at the success of Tyler Perry, who I had the blessing of working with, and you look at Byron Allen, and you look at Oprah Winfrey, and you look at Kathy Hughes at TV One, ownership of our intellectual properties, those are preeminent business assets. Those are things that literally means we've watched every episode of Martin that's re-aired. We as Black people, sports and entertainment is the highest volume of Black billionaires, allegedly, and we don't have enough ownership in those spaces. So whatever it is that you're doing, right, have ownership. And ownership doesn't mean you hoard the whole thing and you keep it to yourself. You need distributors, you need partners. I don't want to own my masters and have to administer all of that. I'm a creative, right? I know a little bit of business. I've learned the hard way, but most people want great partnerships, right? So partnerships should always be equitable, fair partnerships, and everybody's happy, because the creative is able to make sure that their grandkids and their kids can go to college and their houses can be paid for, and the executives are getting if you get the right creative who actually wrote and created the content, you're getting content that goes on in perpetuity. But let that word perpetuity, which isn't so bad if we're involved in it.
Right.
So what we're trying to do through Worth Media and through the Creatives Coalition and From the Bottom Up Foundation, I've just been inspired to share my story, but also, like you talk about Monique's coming on. We're having a great conversation. We've been opening up some really powerful dialogue. And if it means that some of us, because this is the very beginning of us understanding the importance of intellectual property and the actuality of generational wealth, right? Yeah. We have to start educating each other. And if it means that some of us have to be sort of on the losing end, for lack of a better word, some sacrifices are worth it, as long as there are a few of us who understand the value. I want Tyler and Byron, and I'm not trying to call nobody out, but I want these moguls who have built these incredible businesses, right, to really start sharing more of what it took to do it and the pathway to it, right? Because there shouldn't be 5. There should be tens of thousands, because we are the number one consumers of the content that's making people billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah. And you can't be wealthy if you're not free, whether you're enslaved in a contract or whether you're enslaved in an injustice system. You can't even start talking about financial freedom if you are enslaved in any way. And so I applaud the work you're doing, because so many people put chains on themselves inadvertently through bad contracts, through bad business deals, because they don't understand and because they are trying to survive. And so it doesn't matter how talented you are. When people have you enslaved, you will never be able to flourish off of your gifts. And so, thank you for doing that work. And Erica and I are going to donate. And, that's the homework tonight, y'all. That's the homework. So we're going to donate. And in the words of our esteemed sis, Lisa McDowell, we appreciate the kind of money that jingles, but we need the kind of home. Okay. So yes,
that's it.
Put your dollars there.
That's it. That's it. Popularity and fame. I'm like, the stuff they talk about fame being a vapor. And this is just a hypothetical situation in my personal career. I did a show called R&B Divas, huge show, spawned a bunch of seasons and, just hugely successful. A lot of people know it. And then in contrast, I did a show called From the Bottom Up for BET Her, which is up and coming network, women's network at BET. Queen Latifah and Shakim are my partners on that. We co-own that. I made more. I was able to purchase my home based on the money that I made off of From the Bottom Up, which fewer people saw and fewer people know about, versus R&B Divas, because I was an owner in it. So everything that came in, the ad revenue, the revenue for setting it up on all these streaming platforms, all they're doing is re-airing content. So yes, it will in the beginning be harder because you're not going to get the fancy car and the jewels and all that other stuff and be able to show your red bottoms and everything else. But long-term wealth building happens when you have some ownership of the content. And that is why this P-Valley fight is so important for me, because this wasn't a work for hire. This wasn't a just let me be all up in the videos dancing. This is a become my partner. Let's build on this amazing story. And let's create generational wealth, not just for you and yours, but for me and mine too. And that's why I'm fighting.
Well, Nikki, thank you for coming. We are encouraging you to keep going with your fight. So we are not excited for you, but we're happy that you have the energy, the wherewithal to keep moving forward. And just a side note that I forgot to tell you. So Amber is a little bit younger, but see, I was in college in the 90s back when we had, answer machines and such. And I will never forget, one of my line sisters had brownstone on her answer machine when you would call and y'all would be singing to all the people that was leaving her messages. So I just wanted to
the original Tory Lane, right? She's the original Tory Lane. Say it.
Look, when I'm telling you, that's what was playing when you called her. Okay. So I'm telling you about the impact that you had on our
Brownstone is, I know we talked a lot about this, but there's some amazing things coming with Brownstone. So make sure you guys follow us, brownstoneofficial.com. It's a journey of healing and rebuilding and growing. It's amazing. We're coming up on 30 years.
Yes, it's 30 years.
It will be 30 years, baby.
See, you talk about being younger than me. I remember riding around with my auntie and her clips. If you love me, I'm like,
there you go. Right.
Okay, singing my whole life. So
when I'm saying you was riding around with your auntie and I was driving around singing. See, you see the difference, Amber? That's the difference.
Right, difference. She was in the back seat with barrettes, and you was in the front with lip gloss and eyeliner. Boom.
Exactly. But no, so we do hope that you'll keep us posted. But tell us one more time where the people can find you on the socials if you want to be found and where the people can connect with you too.
Absolutely. One thing this will not do is stop my purpose, which is to make sure that my story, my life, and we take some breaks, mental health breaks here and there, but you can find me everywhere at Nikki with 2 C's, NICCI Gilbert, which is trademark, by the way. Trademark your sugar honey iced tea. At Nikki Gilbert on all platforms. And then please follow Brownstone Official. That's the fun, light, sexy part of life.
I heard that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. And y'all, it can be a really tough situation when Black people have disagreements or grievances with other Black people, right? And a lot of times it can be easy for us to view these grievances as airing dirty laundry or fighting against other Black folks. But we got to remember that we all walk around as humans and we have to have accountability. And other people need to be out here telling us when we are wrong. And I think there's a way that we can approach people in a spirit of love as we try to move together peacefully. And we got to be willing to also accept that same criticism when it's coming our way. But at the end of the day, the system is trying to break us all down. So let's not be active participants in that effort. Thanks for tuning in. And we look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of Broken.
All right, good people. Thanks for listening to Brokish. For more episodes, visit us at brokish.com or subscribe, and Brokish will get direct deposited into your favorite podcast app on the 1st and 15th. Share Brokish with your friends and join the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music for Brokish is Come Get Some by Blank and Kit. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.
They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You play any and every position, from coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, I see how to get in slow motion. Get off me. And you're gonna have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you gotta do is you gotta shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.